Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr.
Hello and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. This is our third episode in our Safeguarding Short series. So in this episode we're going to be discussing types of abuse, so let's delve in. So child abuse is, as NSPCC states, we are talking child abuse is when a child is harmed by an adult or another child. It can be over a period of time, but it can also be a one-off action. It can be physical, sexual or emotional, and it can happen in person or online. It can also be a lack of love, care and attention, so this would be classified as neglect.
Absolutely spot on. And there are several types of abuse. It's not limited to this list, but we are talking about things like neglect, physical abuse, so hitting, kicking, punching, domestic abuse. And please do note that updated terminology there from domestic violence to domestic abuse to highlight that domestic abuse is all forms of abuse that we are also talking about today. It includes things like sexual abuse, psychological and emotional, financial or material abuse, bullying, cyberbullying and online abuse, particularly child on child in that instance, although child on child also encompasses all types of abuse. We are also talking about child sexual exploitation or CSE and child criminal exploitation or CCE. We are talking about trafficking, modern slavery, FGM and grooming, and it also includes non-recent abuse.
So the legislation that sits around this is the Children's Act 2004 and the UN Conventions of the Rights of the Child.
Absolutely. As we know, when we're talking about abuse and child abuse, we are focusing on a child-centred approach, and that is very much central and core to our Working Together to Safeguard Children legislation from 2023. It includes things like the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, the Children's Social Care National Framework 2023, the Equality Act 2010, and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was introduced in 1989 but written into legislation in the UK in 1991.
So why is this important, Ellen? Why is it important that we know about abuse?
It is absolutely our duty of care, both as practitioners and as responsible members of society living in a community with our friends, families and other people around us, to know and understand how to recognise the signs and indicators of abuse, what constitutes abuse to prevent us from being perpetrators as well, and to protect the child. So again, having that child-centred approach is absolutely key to this form of safeguarding. We have a responsibility to each other to eliminate discrimination in terms of supporting children and their access to things like education, medicine, healthy relationships. And we also have a responsibility to work together as professionals in the field to support children. Why is it important for you, Gemma?
So as part of your role as a nursery practitioner, like you say, we've got this duty of care to keep them safe, but we also need to be able to know our roles and responsibilities and what to do if we had a concern. So part of that is we would be talking to the designated safeguarding lead, your DSL, or your deputy designated safeguarding lead if you had any concerns about a child, but you need to be aware of what those signs and symptoms are, what they may look like in children of different ages as well. So how it may present itself to a baby may be different to how you may see it in a preschooler or a reception child. So being aware of those, but also we have that duty of care to, like you said, sort of the people around us. So the staff around us, the rest of the people who are working in the nursery, and the parents that we work alongside as well.
Definitely. And I think a takeaway for listeners, if you haven't already read them or it's not been a recent read, go and read the Children's Act of 2004, originally written in 1989 and updated 2004. And go and read your Working Together to Safeguard Children 2023 to understand those two core pieces of legislation both of them go into subsidiary legislation that also feeds into them, and vice versa. But go and read those to understand why it's so important and what has influenced those legislative practices to be put in place as well.
Also, those legislations are the reason for your policies in your nursery as well, aren't they? You know, that's how it's seen on your everyday as well, was in those policies and procedures of what you would do.
Definitely. And unfortunately, quite often, as we've seen in this sector as well, there are cases that have necessitated legislation to be put in place. So understanding that history and context around what we're doing also gives us that insight into why we do what we do, but also gives us that confidence that if we see something that we aren't happy with, especially with emergent technology and that kind of thing, that we are the people to speak up now. We're the generation to then say, actually, I think this is wrong. Let's have a look at this again. So how does it affect us in everyday life?
So for the everyday in nurseries, it's being vigilant, being aware of, knowing your children, so you know if there's a behaviour change. That's a bit bizarre. That's of a come from nowhere situation. Or whether you're seeing, whilst you're observing, you're seeing children acting out certain things in their role play, or it could even be bruises, marks, or burns, scalds, anything like that you're seeing on the children, that would need to be reported. So being confident on all of those signs and symptoms for those different types of abuse.
Definitely. And remembering again that it relates to family, friends, and strangers, and it's on us as trained professionals to be vigilant, even when we aren't necessarily in a professional capacity. So it could be out and about. You see, a child being pulled quite harshly by their arm, with a parent being overly rough with them, or anything that raises those alarm bells, to report that, even if it ends up being nothing. At least you've done something about it. It's always worth making those disclosures, or having a chat with your DSL and making sure you understand the differences between where a child may be being abused or where perhaps there's education that's needed. If in doubt, report it.
Yeah.
Always, 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 always.
Without a doubt.
In day-to-day life in a setting, then, it is also really important to have your regular training and refresher training. So whether you're a practitioner, a DSL, a manager, and to take those things seriously as well, so that we are constantly discussing it between ourselves, being vigilant, and that training isn't just the half an hour a year that you have to sit and click through your online modules and then just hope for the best at the end. When you get your certificate. Actually put it into practice. Say, I saw this on EastEnders last night. What do you think about this? Or whatever it might be. Talk to your DSL and get advice. But also remember that disclosures are often about somebody that you work with or are closely related to. So it could be a friend or a family member, or a parent in your nursery, or a colleague equally. And in reality, disclosures are very difficult. But putting the child at the centre of those decisions will always lead you to making the correct choice.
Definitely. So for me, it's when you get that funny feeling in your tummy, you know that something's not right. If you see something, if you hear someone say something, or someone's just, it could be that, someone's always taking the tablet into the bathroom, or it could be someone's a bit heavy-handed, something like that. But if you get that funny feeling in your tummy, you know that's not right. You need to report that immediately.
Absolutely. And do remember that the NSPCC website is a really cool tool and resource for refreshing your own knowledge on signs and indicators of abuse and why we look out for them. So remember, we are looking at so many different areas of abuse, but it's anything that causes harm or neglect to a child. So we are talking about hitting, kicking, talking down to them, psychologically torturing them with anything, or not giving them access to medicines or whatever it might be. There's a whole host of different things that could harm the child. So keep up with your CPD and keep talking about it.
Yeah, they've got a very good learning page on the NSPCC website as well that's very, very useful, as well as having a very informative section for parents too as well. So, it could be a tool that you guide parents to that website as well, as an idea or suggestion for them to have a look into.
Absolutely fantastic. So that is our safeguarding in short for today. It's a very brief whistle-stop tour into signs and abuse. A very big topic, really, and we could actually talk about it for hours and hours on what the signs and indicators are, our own experience and history within that as well. It is quite an emotive topic for a lot of people as well. So please do tread carefully. If you are talking to other people, do just, test the waters first and make sure you are being respectful to them and their background as well. But as we always say, keep that CPD up, keep talking about it, and go to your DSL if you are at all concerned. So thank you again for tuning in today. As always, safeguarding is a massive topic, but if you've got any concerns at all, reach out to your settings designated safeguarding lead or to the Showcase Training safeguarding lead, which is Ellen, that's me. You can find all of our contact details on our website, and don't forget you can also direct your concerns to your local MASH or LADO, especially if you don't quite know who to report something to. Go through to MASH and LADO and they will be able to direct your concerns.
Absolutely. So don't forget to like, share and follow our podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation going about early years and safeguarding, definitely. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.